This is the Note Closers Show, where you get the latest developments in distressed note investing and learn the secrets of how you can control millions of dollars worth of property for pennies on the dollar. Get educated and entertained by someone who has closed thousands of deals and lives to support you in achieving the same. Now, here's your host, CEO of We Close Notes, Scott Carson.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Note Closers Show. My name is Scott Carson. As always, I'm excited to be here. We have a very special guest joining us from the Pacific Northwest this morning, a good friend of ours who has done a lot of great things with his own note business over the last couple years. And he originally appeared on one of our Facebook Lives, one of the first ones we did long as a kind of a case study to check out before we rolled it into a podcast. And we only thought it fair to bring this man, the myth, the legend, Cody Cox, back on this morning. So good morning, Cody.
Hey, good morning. How are you, Scott?
I'm doing a wonderful. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy
Merry
Kwanzaa.
Christmas to you. Yeah.
Happy New Year. So, Cody, why don't you take a second and share with everybody kind of who you are, what you do, that kind of stuff.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, first of all, I'm just this humble mortgage guy from Northeastern Oregon. Okay. I've been in the mortgage industry for over 35 years at this point in time. And I've done most everything. I was a VP with a major national mortgage company. And currently I still have a day job where I run a mortgage company, essentially for the state of Oregon, for the Veterans Association here. And so that keeps me busy. It's basically, I was just calculating just a couple of days ago, that takes about 12 hours out of my day. And so if I'm going to sleep 7 hours, I've got to, be real disciplined about trying to do this note business. But I got started in the note business probably about 3 years ago. And it was just more of a hobby at that particular time. I had a little funds in an IRA and I was just kind of dabbling with that. But then eventually I decided that, there's a bigger and better way for me to do this. And of course, that's when I associated with you. We sat down on one of the fast tracks and came up with a little bit of a plan. And I'm a little shy of the plan, but nevertheless, I'm a whole lot better than I would have been had we not did that planning. And so here for 2017, I think I'm going to finish with about 17 assets that we acquired within the last 12 months. And some of them are coming around. They're maturing now. We're seeing the back end side of these things. And some of them we're still fighting with.
So I'm glad that you shared the fact that you are putting in a full day of work at a job, and you've got the commute that goes along with it and all that good stuff as well.
Yeah.
So because we had a lot of people here that listen here on a regular basis that are still working full time and trying to figure out the best way to manage it.
Yeah.
And it's not the easiest thing when you are working full time, especially you've got a long commute back and forth to work as well too, don't you?
Yeah, it's about a 40-minute bus drive one way. And so, that takes up, and plus the time to get up. And one of the things about the bus is you're on somebody else's schedule. You just can't jump in the car when you want to go. It's a matter of being there because, the bus leaves without you. And so, so you've got to manage that time. And to be honest, the transition has been a little tougher than I thought it would be. I thought that, I could sit down and do these things at night, but, it takes a lot of effort and it takes some focus. And sometimes you just come home and I'm just a little pooped and I just want to kind of sit down. So it takes a little more discipline and it's a little harder transition than I anticipated it would be.
Yeah, but still 17 notes in the last 12 months is still very phenomenal.
I'm excited about it. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's one every 3 weeks, basically, if you figured it out on average there with the ups and downs and things like that.
Yeah.
For those that are listening or watching this morning, what would you say has been the best thing that you've done? Or actually, let's take it a different way. You're working full time eliminates a lot of the hours that you can do. So you're limiting what you as much as. So what are probably the three biggest things that you do to ensure that you're staying plugged in and working on your business?
Well, I think the big thing is focus more than anything else. Is you got to really move it beyond just being a little hobby, a little something you dabble with on the side, to come up with that why and that goal. And so what I've tried to do is I try and make sure I'm reviewing what sort of goals I have for the year, for the week, for the month, whatever, and make sure you stick to those. And it's like, I send out this weekly emailer every week. And one of the things I wrote recently is, sometimes you got to do what you don't feel like doing. And if this is really going to be a business for you, if it's something that you're going to take it to the next level, which we talk about all the time, but it's a real deal. I mean, you have to focus and you have to settle down and you have to do the things that you want to do in order to get to that next step. It's not going to come if you're just sitting there waiting for it to happen. It doesn't just come to you. You've got to go get it.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And you've been doing regular emails every Sunday for how long now?
Well, it's almost 2 years. It's been at least 20 months. And so, and that consistency, I think, is the key. You've got to do it every week. So,
and I love you share your journey. It's basically a week in the life of Cody Cox, the note investor, what's going on and insights and things like that. Right?
Yeah, my approach on that is, I think, is a little different than some of the other ones I see, because I think consistency is key. And then really, I'm not out there trying to solicit money on an individual deal. I don't think that's the right way to do it. I go out there and I just tell them, this is what happened to me this last week. But here's what's good happened this last week. And here's a way to get on my train. And so that's what I do. It's more of a little story about what I did or what's going on. And sometimes I add a little philosophical point of view into that and just, where I'm coming from, my approach, and, what I think is going to happen next. So that's the fun part for me, because it allows me to be a little creative sometimes, rather than just sit there and say, I've got this deal in Indianapolis, I need $30,000, which I think is not the right way to do that.
Well, I will agree to you at a specific point. I agree if the only email you're sending out is I need funding.
Yeah.
Not the correct way.
Mm-hmm.
With what you're doing in the consistency of sharing the journey and people being aware what's going on, that's a great thing. And then slipping in a deal, hey, I got a deal I'm working on if anybody's interested, is definitely the great way, because you've built the consistency, you've built the trust with your following or your tribe.
Yeah.
Which is a great thing. Now, you also leverage your local REIA group as well?
I have in the past, I have in the past, and I haven't so much recently because, again, I have to be sensitive to my time. But, we've started a little local note closers group here where I think there's about 7 or 8 of us to get together every month, and we talk about what's going on in our note business. And I don't want to be a trainer. I don't want to be a guru. That's outside, and I'll leave that to you. But from my perspective, sharing what we do, best practices, things like that's important. And at times what I was able to do is I would actually have my own little meeting about an hour before the regular local REIA general meeting, and anybody that wanted to come could come. And I think that started off very, very well. It kind of morphed into a training kind of thing. So I said, I don't want to do that. So I quit that. But I was able, being the former president of that REIA, I had access to folks and their mailing address. So obviously they become part of my database. And so they get this weekly emailer from me as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah, Portland's kind of a tough market because, one of the things I have found in the REIAs, is they focus on landlords, they focus on wholesaling, and they focus on flipping. Well, right now, Portland is maybe not the most conducive market for that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of guys sitting out there with some capital that they don't know how to deploy. Well, I know how to deploy it. And so, I've been sitting and talking to folks. I talked to 2 investors yesterday. And so it's a potential. Well, one's a potential. The other one is an existing one. And so, it's easy to get out, and that's what you've got to do. Be consistent in your marketing, talking to these folks and being visible so they know what you're up to.
Yeah, I think that's the huge key, is just sharing your message and getting the word out there for it. And then it's also really good when you're closing on deals. You got a couple deals you want to talk about?
Well, I've got one that it's kind of in the midst of it right now, but it's a performing note. So I saw this note on a tape, and it looked really, really strange. And it was a little house in Detroit, and I'm kind of liking that Detroit market, certain pockets of it. I think there's a lot of potential there. And what this was is I bought the note in mid-July, right after the prior note owner modified the loan. Okay, and what they did is they modified it into a 12-month term, just over an $18,000 UPB, and this guy was paying over $1,500 a month. And so I'm kind of going, hold it. And I did the math, and I must have been the only one that did the math, because I paid $8,900 for that note. This guy is paying me $1,500 a month, and of course the servicer's taking a little bit of that, and I did that in my IRA. So I think my return on that is at least 42%. It might be even more if I look at that.
Well,
But,
if you've had it for 6 months, you've made back your investment. So
yeah. I got
like a 200% ROI to you.
Yeah, and not bad for a 12-month. It's the best 12-month CD I could find. And so
Wait a second. We need to call this a CP.
Yes,
Instead of certificate of disappointment, a certificate of performance.
There we go. Yeah. And so in 12 months, this guy's house is going to be paid off. I'll get all my money plus a whole bunch more back and ready to redeploy on that reperforming note. And I really like that one there. I don't know how anybody else that saw that on that tape missed this deal. I thought it couldn't go wrong. So
is that from a bank or a hedge fund?
It was a hedge fund. Yeah.
Okay.
And I can't remember exactly which one. I've got, 7 or 8 or 12 of them sending me stuff. So that came in, and I thought that was a perfect deal for my IRA.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, I kind of kicked things off about a year ago this time. And one of the deals that I did last year was on this little shack in North Las Vegas. It was a non-performing note in North Las Vegas. It was probably about 1,100 square foot house that, the owner in the house had not made a payment since 2009. Which was the time that his wife had passed away. So, and he was an elderly guy. He had his daughter, single mom daughter, was living with him, who was not contributing anything. His son had just got out of prison, so he wasn't contributing anything. And he was a great old guy, and it was one of those deals that, your heartstrings pulled on you because you don't want to have to kick him out. But perhaps it was really time for him to go. He's at a point where he probably needs some assistance. So we bought the note with the joint venture investor. He funded almost everything. I put $1,000 in because this also was in my IRA. And he funded $48,000. The value of the house as is was right at $80,000. And we could not get those guys to play ball. There was no way that they were going to be able to reperform or get back on track. So reluctantly, we started the foreclosure process. I think that was last April, May, something like that. And then again, this is in Nevada. So the Nevada legislature that year came up with some new rules on their foreclosure mediation process. And so every foreclosure that was in process was on a stay until that respective state agency rewrote the rules on the mediation process. So my investor on this one here was not the most happy guy. I mean, he was counting the days. Cody, we're in this thing 273 days. So he's a former hard money lender, so I knew where he was coming from.
That would make sense then, yeah.
Yeah. And so what happened was in early October, we got the notification that the rules were rewritten. We were able to reinitiate the foreclosure process. So we did that with Daniel Singer's office. And then right about the same time, I get a letter from an email from my loan servicer said we were approached on a short sale. And I go, there's nothing wrong with that. So I looked at the numbers, and as you know, that when there's a short sale, the seller, the owner of the house, really has no money to contribute to the seller closing costs, so all gets passed on to the lender. Well, he wanted a $10,000 relocation fee for this guy that hasn't paid since 2009. All the realtor fees were shoved on my side of the HUD one, and I'm kind of going, no, that ain't going to work. So I countered back, rewrote all the numbers, countered back, and said, we've got 30 days to do this, otherwise I'm foreclosing. And I didn't hear a thing. So one day I'm coming home from my work, and I'm on the bus, and I'm looking at my phone, and I'm looking at my email, and I see an email from my servicer that says an auto deposit was made to your account. Well, I go, that's fine, but it looks like all the other ones where I've got people paying me, so I didn't really pay any attention to it till I got home. So I got home, opened up the email, and here's this deposit in there of $72,000. Now, my wife sees me dancing. So, and so I'm going, what's this all about? Well, apparently they accepted the short sale, my counter offer. There was $72,000 in the bank. The servicer took care of all the reconveyances and all that sort of stuff. So here about 3 weeks ago, I was able to sit down to coffee with this investor who was counting the days. I handed him a check that repaid his $48,000. plus another $12,500 would put him at an ROI of, what was it, 42.6, 34.6 or something like that. And of course, since I had $1,000 in it and I got $11,000 back, my return on that was like 1,100. So not quite infinity, but it was a pretty good deal. And that's the way it's supposed to be. And so needless to say, this stuff works. Yeah,
it definitely works. It definitely works. Yeah. It's great. Now your stuff is, the other deals you're dealing with primarily performing, so that's turned into performing, having to foreclose on a lot of them, or how's that working out for you?
Yeah, well, my model kind of follows, the idea that these borrowers, we want to keep them in the house. In fact, yesterday, one of the guys I was talking to is a loan officer. He runs his own brokerage shop, and I've known him for 31 years. We both have been on the mortgage side for quite a while. And it's something I said to him. I said, Todd, you and I have put a lot of people into houses over the years. It looks like I'm finishing my career by keeping people in the house. And so I thought that was kind of a neat little philosophy. And so my goal is to try and keep everybody I can in that house if it works for everybody involved. Now, it doesn't work for everybody involved, but we'll give it a try. And if it doesn't, then we'll go down the deed in lieu path, or we'll go down the foreclosure path if we have to. My whole goal, again, is if we can't keep them in the house, at least find a way to provide them with a dignified way for them to exit that. And that's kind of our approach on that. We've got one right now that we're going to accept the deed in lieu. We're paying her some cash for keys. She's moving out. I'm going to pay it directly to the landlord so they can get into a place, let her stay in the house over the holidays. And after the first of the year, it's going to happen that way. So I'll have a house to market there. This one here is in Ohio somewhere. So.
If you guys have any questions or listening or watching, you feel free to type those in the Facebook Live or monitor those. I have to give a big shout out. My staff is off today, but Nicole is even monitoring the comments from her house, which is awesome. I got a great staff. All right, let's see here. Good morning, everybody. Good to see a lot of people there. Jim Lewin says, yay, you guys rock. Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
This is good, Cody. They love their Friday stroll that you have. Let's talk about your Friday stroll while we got some questions coming in.
Well, I do this Sunday night thing every Sunday night, and for the folks that don't open it, I send the emailer again on Wednesday. And we've talked about, and we've heard a lot that, video is kind of the next marketing thing. It's the big marketing thing. So I've kind of chosen Friday as a day that I can get out of the office. Now, I am a fair weather stroller. Okay, if it's raining out there, I'm not going to do it. But if it's cold like it is today, I'll still get out and do that today. But it's really kind of a cumulative philosophical thoughts of what I've gone through for the week. And recently I've been talking about finishing strong for 2017, gaining momentum to 2018. So really, it's just a Facebook Live thing that I eventually upload into my YouTube. Just kind of 7 or 8 minutes of just what has been on my mind, kind of this theme that's been going on in my head, and tie it into success, tie it into notes, tie it into anything like that. Just a little video, just a little snippet, and hopefully somebody can take that and power their way through the weekend on it. So
it's effective. You get a lot of people that like it. I watch it every Friday. I mean, I catch it live, but I do go back and watch it.
Yeah.
My staff comes, hey, did you see Cody's Friday stroll? I was like, no, let me go back and watch it here.
That's great. Yeah.
Let's see here. Scott Hartwell says, awesome, congrats. You've bought 17 notes.
Yeah.
Do you remember what your goal was at the beginning of the year?
Well, you and I sat down and we were going to try and do 60. I've actually deferred that to 2018. I think I can do 60 in 2018. And as Juan and I broke down and sat down and talked about it, that's really only 5 a month.
Yeah.
And if you can really just sit down and break it down to that elements rather than look at this big chunk of 60, it's, the old adage, how to eat an elephant. Well, I'm going to eat it 5 notes at a month. Mm-hmm. And so in that case, that's very, very doable, even with a full-time job. Mm-hmm. And so with that focus, with the commitment I have, with about $3 million for in pledges from my joint venture. I mean, I'm in this situation now where I've got my joint venture investors emailing me saying, when are we going to do a deal? I've got this money, it's allocated. When are we going to do a deal? So it's a nice little problem to have. but I got to make sure that they don't go invest in Bitcoin before I can get them in a note.
Well, they may be calling you more today based on the drop of Bitcoin.
I see that. So
I think it's down 33% in the last couple of days. So
yeah. So that's it.
Now, where are you investing? Are you buying a lot of stuff in the Northwest or doing more so in the Midwest?
Well, Oregon's a little tough market. I mean, because the values here are such to a point that the banks are going to go ahead and just keep them and foreclose it themselves. I found that most foreclosure activities are fixed costs. So it's the same cost for somebody to do it at $25,000 as it does to, $250,000. So the banks are going to keep that because of their profit margin. So I'm focused on the better entry level values, somewhere Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, Missouri. I like North and South Carolina in that regards. I'll look at some of the other ones. Sometimes if it's in the right area in Pennsylvania, I'll look at that as well. I hate Illinois. I hate it. So I've got one that's just dragging on, and the attorneys will tell me, what do you expect? It's a consumer-friendly state. So that's dragging on too much. So that's kind of where I'm looking at it. At things that are more entry-level, where most of my JV investors have the capital available to get into something. Although I had a dream dinner last night with one of my existing investors, and he says, we need to elevate our loan amount. So he's ready to start looking at higher value houses. And I'm going, if I could have 5 or 6 or 7 of these guys, it's right where I want to go. And it's just a matter, again, of visibility, talking to these guys and understanding their expectations.
Right. We got somebody join us late. You've been doing notes for about 3 years. Started off as a hobby for the most part, picked a couple of deals up. But have been very serious for the last 18 months for the most part, right? Yeah,
it's been about 14 months. Yeah. Because I sat down with you at the Fast Track in October of 2016. So
that's right. We saw the picture pop up in October. You got here. We were out to the Oasis having dinner.
Oh yeah, that was great. I'm ready for that again.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I would take a little sunshine here too. What's been another big tool or resource that you have used to really help you with your business and balance that work and note life aspect?
Well, you've challenged me throughout the year about delegating and hiring assistants. And so I haven't been able to do that to the full measure that I should, but I am incredibly seeing the value of that more and more. And so that's the big deal. I've done a little internal tools to try and make, my process a little bit easier. I've actually have hired a guy who's building kind of a tape scrubber for me. I've talked to the folks at Upworks, but I wasn't exactly happy with what I saw there. And so, going into the new year, there's some things I really, really have to implement. My website's kind of rolling pretty good. Although, the whole thing is who's my website targeting? It's not targeting the consumer. It's targeting the hedge fund managers, targeting the bank. So you have to make sure that who your audience is, not only with your websites, but also where you're sending these emailers out to. So targeted marketing, I think, is a big deal, and making sure that your message is on target for who you want to receive it. So that's a big deal for me. So
I'm going to give you a gift. It's a company we had on the virtual workshop this last week called Note Pros.
Okay, I have seen that. Yeah.
It is well worth it. They will basically knock out all your initial online valuation, bed, bath, rent rates, literally in seconds. And it's notepros.com, pros with a Z.
Yeah.
Very inexpensive. It's like 27. If you, I'll drop you a link, or if Nicole can post it in the comments, notepros.com/Scott Carson. And it will actually, if you sign up, instead of being $47 a month, it's $27 a month.
Oh, wow.
For a lifetime.
Yeah.
So it also has a nice feature where it's pulled, there's pulling bank asset managers in 12 major states.
Okay. That's a deal.
So yeah, something we've been toying with around for a while. They've gotten better. They're constantly tweaking it, but it's been something we've been working with them for about 6 months and stuff, just to help people like you and other things. Because the biggest kind of bottleneck is you're getting tapes in, you've got sources, is finding that time to break it down and go through everything and make the bids and go back and forth, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of funny. Something clicked in me about 4 nights ago. It was 4:30 in the morning, okay? And I must have been waking up, And in this dream of what it was, I was talking to a new investor and getting it set up for them to invest in my company. And then I turned around and there was a laptop, which signified due diligence, if you will. I know this is kind of weird, but this is what it meant to me.
This is a good Friday stroll topic.
But the laptop was closed, which meant that's not what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be doing, and the constant reminder is, what is my highest and best use? You know, it's the old appraisal term. What's the highest and best use of that asset? Well, what's my highest and best use? And maybe it's out talking to these guys to generate business development for my company and all these other technical things, which are not my favorite anyway, is I need to delegate that out. So it was something that kind of clicked in me for what's going on for the next year. So
love it.
Yeah.
Love it. What questions do you guys have for Mr. Cody Cox from Trinity National Holdings there? I see a lot of great people out there this morning. Good morning, Tim Dillon. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year's, everybody. Hey, Eric Bonavent and Holtz. Good morning. Good morning, Lamar. Good morning, Fernando. Good morning, Michelle Young. Donald C. Casey Lung. Got a lot of love from all across the country, Cody. You should know that.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it very much. So, and if I can help, let me know.
So you're relying on, once you buy a note, you're relying on the senior law group to do most of your workouts to your borrowers? Yeah,
most of the loss meant. We always try and run it through them to begin with, especially, and again, I've tweaked my model just a little bit because, I did look at vacant houses at one point in time, and I'm going, I think another important part of what we do here is make sure you have a written model and you stay within the parameters of that. Because I know we talk about all these good things that have happened. Well, there's been a couple things that haven't been quite so good. And I've noticed that the main thing that happens during those is I've got outside my model some degree. And whenever you get outside your model, you're dealing with some unknown stuff, and that's not where your focus is. That's not where your expertise is. So I've tweaked it down to make sure that every asset I break down on a tape is owner occupied, because that's what I want to do. The vacant ones are the ones that maybe have the window shattered out or internal fire, and you can't see that sort of stuff. So that's what I'm looking at, is to make sure that again, I'm constantly trying to refine what my model is and get it down to something that's very systematic every single time.
Let's talk about a couple of those deals, if you don't mind sharing this morning.
Well, yeah, okay. It's like, one of our contemporaries talks about he buys houses where the people, it's always an estate. Well, estates, I have found the couple that I've done are the ones that sometimes come back a little problematic. That I've got a house right now that we've had on the market. It's an REO we've had on the market in Michigan City, Indiana. It's and if you know where Michigan City is, it's right at the bottom of Lake Michigan. It's a nice little community there, and this is a nice little single level house. But the people that have lived in there, had been there for a long time, and so it needs some updating. My model isn't exactly to do any updating, so I'm trying to sell it as is to a local investor, but it was an estate. And so, it'd been neglected for a while, and maybe even in fact, 2 owners ago winterized the house. And so I never had to winterize the house, because it had been winterized by 2 note owners before. And so that's one of the ones that I've got it in inventory. I'm trying to sell it, but it's taken a little while because there's just, it just needs a little more work than I have the capacity to do right now. I've got another one, a nice little home in Ohio, in Cleveland, actually, that will be on the market here very, very soon. But again, it's an estate. Fortunately, we've got somebody in that house. I have no idea who's in that house. You just really don't know. But I have found that you can really, there's customers out there, there's homeowners in that really want to do something, whether it's try and retain the house or exit in a dignified manner. And for me, that works out a whole lot better when you have somebody that is cooperating with whatever the next step is. And so I think it saves thousands of dollars too.
Yeah, definitely. Have you run any problems with any of the rehab stuff in Cleveland or anything like that in Cuyahoga County?
Not yet. One of the houses, the new houses, more houses I've got is going to be in Cuyahoga County, in Cuyahoga Falls. I've got another one coming in South Euclid here real quickly. So, they're nice homes, they're occupied, but we'll see what the next step is. So
let's talk a little about that. You like occupied because A, you can hopefully keep them in the property.
Yep. Yeah.
B, they can start paying you without having, and then C, you're not having to do a lot of rehab, right? A lot of repairs, hopefully.
Right. Exactly. And that's the three top things I'm looking at, because, there's a lot of folks that have the expertise to do a remote rehab. That's not me. Now, if I didn't have the day job, maybe that's another story. Maybe I can go out there and that sort of stuff. But again, I've got to stay within my model. And my model right now is I've still got to focus on the day job. It's a pretty substantial one. There's a lot of responsibility there with this other thing going, with this note business going on here, that I've got to make sure that I don't overextend myself. That's, there's a lot of other marketing opportunities I could do, because I'm not doing, you've talked about the content spider and all the way to get a lot of things out there. A lot of that I have to temper what I'm doing, because I've got to make sure that I can manage what I can manage right where I'm at. Again, if we're able to do what you and I talked to a couple days ago by this time next year, then that's a different story. So everything is ramping up towards that in just, incremental steps.
It's fun. So, it's a fun game, isn't it?
It is fun. It is fun, and I've always liked to, because a lot of what we do is manage vendors, which, is akin to herding cats. And so I like that,
And who are you using as your servicer? Is it Madison, FCI?
I like Madison. I've got some at FCI. FCI, I haven't been 100% enamored with. I've got a couple at SN Servicing as well. Those guys seem to be responsive, but I think they're a little bit more expensive than I want them to be, especially on non-performing. The folks at Madison, I think, have done a really good job for me. And so as I can, I'm filtering as much stuff as I can that way. So.
Yeah. We're a big fan of Shantae and Kevin and the whole staff over there. They do a great job.
Hey, they sent me a Christmas card. I got a Christmas card from them. I go, they got to be good. So.
A hand signed one as well too.
Yes,
I got it too. It's good stuff for them as well. Let's go.
Yeah.
Donovan asked a question here, and Donovan, maybe you missed this earlier. He goes, Donovan asked, "What are you doing to build your local note group?"
Well, I've actually kind of deferred it to another mastermind student that lives here locally. I'm letting him manage that part of it, but I'm still, involved in it as I can. And we still have that old Facebook page, which is called the Portland Note Closers, which I'm an admin of that. So I do a lot of marketing that way. Again, this is not what I would consider a source of additional capital or additional business for me, but it is a networking, best practices review kind of thing. So I look at it from that way. Again, it's targeting what you want out of what you're doing there. So, a local meetup group, a local networking group, to me is more of a best practices. What are you doing here? Who's your servicer? What do you find on this? Have you talked to Wayne County, Michigan before, and who's your contact there? That's what that's for on a local basis. If I'm going out to try and raise some more capital, I don't think I'm going to find it in a local note closers group like that.
Because they're all looking for the same thing, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the thing. And again, I have to be sensitive to the fact that a lot of these guys, are still waiting to buy their first note. And so, you've got to judge your time, especially when it's limited. In fact, here's another thing. I've got an offer. Here's one of the things that weekly email is generated. Okay. I have an offer to now become a contributing editor or a contributing writer, if you will, to a national investor magazine. Okay. And so I think that's a good opportunity for exposure. But again, it's another opportunity to take time away from my mission. And so, sometimes you have to say no to the good so you're available for the better. And so I'm weighing that very, very carefully. Now, if it's a one-time thing, that might be the case, but it might not be. And so, that's kind of one of the things I have to consider.
Yeah, because that's the thing. Until you've hit your goal,
yeah,
it's better sometimes to say no than say yes to everything. I mean, I get bombarded with stuff on a regular basis. Oh, you want? I'm like, no. Yeah. And I think somebody wrote the book called The Power of No. The sooner you learn to say no, the faster you'll find success. Is a quote that I've heard from several people, and I would totally agree to that. Because when we get rock and roll, and it's exciting. It's really an ego boost when people come to, hey, can you do this? Or will you come speak? Or will you write? Or will you appear here? And that's all great, and it can lead to that. But if you're not hitting your ultimate goal first, your goal gets pushed to the side, chasing these other things. And it's kind of like the Russian proverb: "A man who chases two rabbits catches none." So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I do have another opportunity coming up here in the end of January to go speak in another local RIA group. And so, the last time I did that, I walked away with $2 million in pledges. So I anticipate a good number coming out of that as well. Because again, these are local investors who have capital to deploy, but there's no assets to try and deploy them on.
Right. Yeah, Portland's very similar to Austin. We've got they're sister cities actually.
It's because they're weird.
Exactly. Keep Austin, keep Portland weird. We keep Austin weird, and then Portland is where 20-year-olds go to retire.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Plus, you've got the whole green economy up there as well too.
That's right.
Have you run into any of I know this. I kind of know the answer to that already, but I'm going to ask it there for everybody. Yeah. Do you have any of your green investors looking to deploy their capital?
Well, I actually, there was another note investor that's decided to give up on notes and buy a farm. Okay. So yeah, they're doing that, and she's trying to raise capital for her little farming activities. I also had a local investor that I had a contact with, and he gave up his a local attorney. He gave up his law practice to invest in a farm down in Southern Oregon because he's going to go on this big growth thing. So there's a lot of people that are looking to participate in this, this growth economy that we have here in Oregon. So it's kind of interesting, kind of the mindset that they have and where it's going, and who knows, where it's going to develop. To me, it's another Bitcoin. So.
Yeah, they just figured out how to get that. It'll be a little harder to get that money from the green in the ground to the green in the wall.
That's right. Yeah. And some of the local credit unions have opened their doors for those guys, because banking has always been a big problem because of the national rules on that. But some of the local Oregon-grown, excuse the pun, credit unions have opened their doors to that. So.
That's good stuff. Now you have your website. We'll take a different shift. You have your website targeted towards banks and asset managers. What are you doing to reach out for new sources?
Well, basically, I've also I use MailChimp. I have found it to be very, very easy. At my government job, we have this government kind of mailing system that's convoluted, and I don't use it because I don't know how. But MailChimp is real easy as far as I can see. And so I've got like 4 lists that I'm sending stuff out to, maybe 5, and one of them are the asset managers and banks and things like that. And that's just a simple search that I do on LinkedIn periodically and update it to the ones that aren't on it already. And again, as you get more visible, people start requesting connections with you, and you add those to the list. And so part of what I need to do in 2018 is to get a greater following on the bank side of things, and maybe even the servicer side of things as well. Because I have found, as we've talked about before, the hedge funds are the low-hanging fruit, which everybody pretty much has access to. And, with an influx of new folks coming into the note space, prices are going up, and I'm not all that happy with them, especially on the hedge fund side of things. And they'll play you against somebody else that you don't know is there or not. And so I find that by going to the banks directly, or maybe even to some of the servicers, you're going to get a little bit better pricing. You're going to get a little bit better service. And I think the next step, rather than try by one-offs, with the funding that I have access to, I'm going to start looking at small pools. Because if I only have to do 5 a month, then if I buy a 15 asset pool, there's a quarter for me. And so why not do that? If I can find one bank in, Ohio that's got 15 assets they want to sell, well, there's my whole quarter. I work that whole quarter on that as I continue all the other stuff. It's always, recycling the marketing pieces. But that'll solve my 60 pretty quickly in that regards. So. Yeah,
and I think that's the 2018 is going to be the year of the bulk. Yeah. Not the Hulk, but the mini bulk at least. Because I would agree to you, you have a lot of people that are coming over from the fix and flip side, the tired landlords. They want to get their feet wet. They're not going to do as much work. They're like, what? You have to reach out and talk to somebody? You just can't drop postcards in the mail? You know, that kind of facet.
Well, I think the other thing is what happens after you acquire the note. There are a lot of little things that you have to take care of. Like, if you buy a note, how are you going to record that assignment? Okay. And so somebody who's a fix and flipper probably doesn't exactly know what an assignment is. And so all those kind of things, there's a lot of stuff that happens after you acquire the note, getting it set up with the servicer, getting it set up with loss mitigation. You've got this request. How do you even review a collateral package when it gets into it? And what's this stuff on the title policy mean? And so there's a lot of little things right there that come with time and experience that I think some of the folks that are just now coming into the marketplace that were a tired landlord don't have that exposure, and so they're going to get disappointed pretty quickly when that thing doesn't work out for them just because they missed the detail.
Well, we deal with that on a regular basis. I get people call me all the time looking for notes.
Yeah. And
I ask them, what's their history? Oh, I'm a landlord, or I got a lot of real estate experience.
Oh, yeah.
I don't need to learn anything. Like, well, no, it's a different experience. It's a different mindset. They come, and I think a lot of people struggle. I know I struggled with it when I first got into this about a decade ago, was you start evaluating things from the fix and flip side.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Or ARV versus as is. And we both know there's a lot of discrepancy between those two numbers,
Yeah. Well, and I've been in the mortgage industry for 35 years. I've seen a lot of it, mostly on the origination side. Now, I worked for the state on the Oregon Hardest Hit Funds team. And so I see a lot of that sort of stuff, or I saw a lot of that stuff on the servicing side of things, plus what I do now. But I tell you, every day in the note business is a day of education. You learn something new every day. And nobody, and I think you who've been in it as long as you have would agree, there's always something new that comes along. You have to be flexible enough and pull from your experience in order to deal with it. So it's not like it's cut and dried, which to me is the exciting part of it, is because every asset is just a little bit different.
Mm-hmm. Every asset tells a different story, whether it's in Michigan City or Cleveland or Las Vegas.
Yeah, exactly. Or Klamath Falls.
Tell me about that deal.
Well, this is one of my first deals. It was a little beat up house in Klamath Falls, Oregon. If you know where Klamath Falls is, it's down in the southern part of the state. It's off over by itself, kind of out in an arid desert. Okay. And this was a little beat up house that this gal from California had purchased as a second home. Okay. Now, why anybody would want a second home in Klamath Falls, I don't understand. But it was at the time when people were buying real estate if they had, breath to breathe. And so I don't think she ever made a payment. I don't think she ever went to the house. But I bought it from a fund, and the house was worth about $25,000 as is. I paid $12,000 for the note. And we were able to convince this borrower. We chased her through Southern California for about 4 months and finally caught up with her to sign a deed in lieu. And then she sent it back to us but didn't sign it. She had it notarized, but she didn't sign it. And so we had to find her again, sign it. And then once I got it listed on the market, we sold it in 24 hours, closed within 10 days. At $25,000, I had 103% ROI back into my IRA on that one there. And that took about 8 months to do that. So, and the hard part was finding her in Southern California someplace.
Yeah, that's sometimes the toughest, tracking down the borrower, especially when it's a second home. When it's not their primary residence, it's sometimes a difficult thing.
Yeah. And, she owed over $100,000 on this thing here. So part of my hook with that is I'll waive my deficiency if you sign the deed in lieu. And so we did that. Otherwise, it'd go through a foreclosure. And of course, the recovery on a deficiency is nominal at best. But but anyway, it worked out great. And so stuffing that IRA, I think, is a good thing.
Exactly. I think a lot of people don't realize the power of the self-directed IRA and how valuable and how really it is geared that you can use it for fix and flips, but it really works really, really well with a note business, especially when you have your servicer handling all this stuff because you're not self-dealing.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's the key with where I'm sitting at is to have the right vendors in place that can do that day-to-day stuff. I am not the detail, task-oriented person. And my wife will say, that's exactly right. You said the right thing. How many unfinished projects do I have around here? But the deal of it is, I'll go out and make the initial contact, the business development. I'll pick up the telephone. I've done 20,000 cold calls in my life. So that's not a big deal to me anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Any other questions for Mr. Cody Cox of Trinity National Holdings here before we let him go on his Friday before Christmas, everybody? You're doing some great stuff, Cody. I love the fact that I think consistency is building success. It's the you keep moving forward, and doing a great job, man.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And I appreciate your direction and support on that as well. Because, there's things that weren't happening until I got associated with you.
That's all right. Hey, sometimes you just need a push in the right way. And we talk on a pretty regular basis, don't we?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do. And, I know you've got a size 12 boot, and every once in a while it hits me in the butt.
It's actually size 14.
14, okay. Well, yeah.
Well, but that's the thing, because I think it's now I want to bring that up, and it's not a negative thing; it's a good thing. Is when we all hit roadblocks.
Oh yeah.
Even I do, and we all hit dull or plateaus, or we get stuck in the mud with life and things like that. And sometimes it's good just to pick up the phone and talk to somebody. Hey, this is what's going on, and is there? We all do that. I do this. I call my buddy Greg Reed every once in a while. It's about 5 minutes. It was about 4.5 minutes longer than any other conversation with him.
Yeah.
On stuff, but that's just it. You call me about. We talk regularly online, text message stuff like that. But when you hit a little spot, you give me a phone call. We talk for about a half hour, 35 minutes, and go from there. And I think that's a very valuable resource versus a lot of people will just hide and not do anything.
Yeah. And as a former RIA president, I've had a lot of those national speakers come through. I hired a lot of them to come speak to my group. And, you've always been the most accessible one that I've ever had that I've been associated with. So, again, I really appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate those words. Thanks so much, Cody. So I'll tell you what, buddy, you've done a tremendous job. We're very proud of you.
Thank you.
We look forward to see what you're going to accomplish in 2018. We're going to see you in Cape Coral in April.
We are making the plans right now to be there, so make sure you get our names down. Yeah,
we got you. We're gonna have a good time there. Looking forward to it, brother. Just so you don't know, Cody Cox was the Rookie of the Year last year as well, weren't you?
I was a superstar, marketing superstar.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right.
That's what it was. So,
at our mastermind last year, just doing the basic things that you need to be doing on a regular basis, and
just you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Just roll the wheel.
Right. And that's the thing. You just share what your journey's been done. You've raised capital. You've talked with people. You have people that have pledged money to you. It's all about going out and shopping now, going and spending other people's money to make money, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And reward them as well.
Exactly. Because it truly is a win-win. So, hey, here's to the deals and the funders that count the day on a day-by-day basis. We're very proud, Cody. Thank you so much for joining us on the Note Closer Show, bud.
Appreciate it. Merry Christmas to you and all the group there at We Close Notes.
Will do. They send their love, give our best to your wonderful wife as well, and everybody up that neck of the woods in the Pacific Northwest, bud.
All right. Thank you.
We'll see you later, bud. So
all right.
That'll wrap it up, everybody, for today's episode of the Note Closer Show. You go out and have a great time. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year's, everybody. Go out and make something happen, and we'll see you all at the top, everybody. Bye. Great stuff, man.
Hey, thanks, man. That was